Generally calm people, what made you finally snap? Story 1. My 7th freaking trip to the DMV when trying to reinstate my license. Every single time they scrutinized my paperwork and always managed to find something wrong and would send me a way to fix it. On this 7th trip, they finally resorted to, "You have no proof that you ever had a license," to despite my piles of paperwork showing my driving record, among other things. I refused to leave the seat and said, "You people are freaking monsters." A manager was called. We argued. He said he believed that I had a license, but there was just no proof, and he couldn't risk accepting my paperwork in case someone checked it. I said I refused to leave the seat until I knew exactly what was needed. The manager said, "Tell you what, I can contact the last state you lived in," and could get verification that I had a license there. It would take 3 minutes. That's when I yelled in the DMV, "Why wasn't that the first freaking thing you said?" Anyway, I got my license back. Oh my god, something similar happened to me. I was transferring my license from TX to WV. Well, I went in and told them I wasn't sure of what I needed and wanted to make a list. They told me everything I needed and I gathered it and came back. Then they said, "No, you need X too." I do this 4 times. I finally have everything I need, and then they try to argue with me over my marriage license since I needed it to prove why my name was different on my birth certificate. In Texas, the way marriage licenses work is you go and apply for one, then they send you an unsigned marriage certificate. When you get married, your officiant signs it and sends it to the courts, who validates the signature, puts a seal on it, and returns the original to you. They argued with me because it says on it not valid if not used within 30 days, so they tried to tell me since I'd gotten married years prior it was no longer valid. I explained to them that it only meant if we didn't get married, and had it signed and sent to the court within 30 days of applying for it, which we did. They tell me no, that won't do and I need the original. I will try to explain again that this is the original paperwork. I show the seal, the signature from the court, and they just won't accept it. I can get a copy, but it's going to look exactly the same as my original, so I asked them what they want me to do. She tells me to go online and pay like $45 for a novelty marriage license. It's literally just a fancy paper that you could frame instead of your original. But you could literally say that you're married to the Pope with no questions asked. I lost my mind and told them how idiotic that was and made a huge scene. I'm such a calm person too, but I was so fed up. They finally relented and just agreed to accept it. A few years later, I transferred my license from WV to PA, and I went in armed to the teeth with paperwork. I didn't need half of it, and it took literally less than 5 minutes to get my license. I just moved to a new state and need to get a DL from the new state. Having not been to the DMV in more than a decade, I was unsure what I needed to bring. The only thing I didn't bring was my birth certificate, and guess what I needed? My response to not being able to get my DL without a birth certificate was something along the lines of, "Is the fact that I'm 30 and standing in front of you not proof that I was born?" I'm in the same freaking boat. I got a DUI a few years ago. The plurality of the word year is intentional. Cleared all of my requirements, go to the DMV to get my license, and they say no. I need to have a vehicle interlock. Well, I don't have a vehicle. I need a license to even test drive a vehicle, and I have a letter from my judge stating that an interlock isn't required. They tell me tough crap, so here I am in hell. I need to buy a car, move it to the DMV to register it, insure it, move it to an area to install a legally unnecessary device, and then somehow get back to the DMV for a driver's license for it at the end. How freaking backwards are you? This sounds like one of my 5 most recent trips to get my dependent military ID renewed. On my 4th trip, I had just found out that I was pregnant and the lady had told me my paperwork was incorrect. But it wasn't, according to their website. I just didn't have one specific letter from the registrar at college, and couldn't get one for the future, which is what the ID people wanted. I got extremely frustrated because they always pull this crap and break down sobbing at this poor lady. She was so sympathetic and wouldn't let me leave until I called the registrar and she spoke to them about what I needed and why. Sure enough, they wrote the letter and I picked it up. When I went back again, I requested the lady who helped me, and got to apologize for sobbing at her last time. She made my ID and all was good in the world. I got a divorce back in February, and I've been jumping through hoops to get my name changed for a while. After waiting in one last godforsaken line, I finally got an official copy of my decree. While I was there, they informed me that the staple had been removed and the document was no longer valid. Okay, whatever. so I go to a third-party DMV first, since they're open on Saturday. Their system is down. Whatever, I'll just call and come back when it's up and working again. No biggie, so I go to my bank. The lady at the bank is super nice. We got my name changed, nice and smooth. I go back to the third-party DMV when their system is back up. I fill out the form, wait my turn, and I'm so ready to get this crap done. Right as they're about to finish things up, the lady tells me someone removed the staple. I was kind of confused because I couldn't even think of who removed it. I'm trying to reason with the lady, but she just gives me one of those looks that says nothing you say is going to change anything. I stormed out of there. I was so pissed. Then it hit me. The lady at the bank had to scan the document, and she removed the staple in order to do it. I was so close to finishing this thing only to have a staple get in the way. That meant I had to go through the whole process again to get a new official copy of my decree. I was livid. Happy ending though. I called the lady at the bank to ask her if she could reimburse me for replacing the document. She made a couple of phone calls and found out the real DMV would take the decree, even if the staple was removed. I took a half day at work and got it taken care of in 20 minutes. I freaking hate the DMV, and I will for the rest of my life. We moved to our state 3.5 years ago, and when we went to switch our licenses over, we had trouble with my husband's. Similar stuff to your experience. Finally, all options were exhausted, and they gave us a number to call to see why his license couldn't be switched. Well, we called, and they said that my husband of 12 years couldn't get his license here because of old DUIs. Never mind that he had been prosecuted long ago and had been punished already. The end result, after a lawyer and crap, was that we had to lose his license for 3 years. They granted him a work license with a breathalyzer in his car, which is annoying and costs money. I am a nervous driver. I hate driving, and I have had to drive everywhere for 3 years. We're currently in the process of trying to get his license back since his time is up, but it's slow going because our state wants him to take a class, at our expense of course, that is identical to one he took years ago in another state. I am sure that once we get the paperwork to them, they will think of other hurdles. You'd think there'd be laws against having to be basically sentenced twice for something, but I guess not. I hate the DMV and our stupid freaking state. Story 2. I was always a really quiet kid, even as a toddler apparently. So, one of the first times I remember losing my crap was when I got really tired of this 3rd grader picking on me on the bus. I was in kindergarten and this kid kept popping his head up over the seat and poking me. I timed it out, and the next time he did it, I punched him straight in the nose, and he immediately started bleeding and crying. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently the kid's parents tried to get some disciplinary action against me. That was until they found out I wasn't the same age or older. They just didn't want to make such a big stink of their kid getting bitch slapped by a kindergartner. There were these twins that picked on me in 2nd grade. Every day after class. They were much bigger than I was, much older. Finally, one day I had had enough and kicked the first one right in the balls. While his brother was laughing, I kicked him in the balls. They decided after that to pick on other people. Oh gosh, I have a nearly identical story. I also fall under the mostly calm category and am a pretty quiet kid. In elementary school on the bus, this little guy was hitting me over the head with his trapper keeper. 80s kids will remember, and laughing with his friend about it. It happened at least 3 times, and I loudly told him if he did it again, I would punch him in the nose. Well, he did it again, and I delivered on my promise. He promptly tattled on me to the bus driver who, in her thick New England accent, proclaimed, "She warned ya!" I did not get in trouble. As an aside, I found out later that the kid had a horrible home life, and he never even made it to high school. That makes me sad when I think about this story. I don't regret sticking up for myself, though. Good for you. The same thing happened to me in high school. I had to ride the bus because my family moved to North Carolina, where you can't get your driver's license until you've taken a driver's ed course, which took 2 semesters. I didn't get it until I was 17. Freaking living hell waiting for that to happen, and my parents were horrible people. Anyways, this kid lived in my neighborhood and was getting hostile with me for no reason over the course of 2 weeks on the bus ride home. A group of kids stole his backpack on the bus one day and were passing it along the floorboard of the bus to the back, and everyone was laughing. I didn't help but laugh, as well, when he started yelling at everyone. Everyone was laughing. But he targets me and comes up to me and says something like, "If you ever do that again, I'm going to punch you in the frickin' face." He says this right before the bus is at our stop. I'm boiling and follow him off the bus and then walk beside him and ask him why he said that to me. And he keeps saying, "Because you're a little bitch." And I couldn't hold it back anymore and blindsided his ass and immediately busted his lip. I hadn't hit anyone since the 6th grade. Then a fight happened where he tried to kick me a few times, but he was really scared of me hitting him again. I don't remember what happened, but he was weird after that. He complimented me the next day about how I did a good job busting his lip and sincerely asked me if I wanted to come over to his house and hang out. I never hung out with him. Has that ever happened to anyone? Like the guy wants to hang out after you beat him up? I hated high school and middle school, hated everyone and everything, including myself and my family, but I was freaking done taking crap that day. I had a similar experience in the first grade. I walked to school every morning one way, while the junior high kids walked the opposite way. There was a big blonde bitch and her little minions who would push me into the bushes whenever we crossed paths. When she got to the third time, I yelled at her to wait a minute. I moved closer, wound up punching her square in the face, missed the first hit, and spun around in a circle. Accidentally, which increased the power so that when I did connect on the second spin, I smashed her nose. Her minions ran away and I left her laying on the sidewalk, half in that damn bush, with tears and blood streaming down her face. She never came near me again. I was an unnaturally small, tiny little slip of a thing. It was like there was some supernatural power that assisted me. Story 3. It was Halloween and I was sitting out on the front of my house watching my sister take my niece, who was around 4, trick-or-treating. The people who lived above us decided to shoot a firework at them. This is the only time I've lost my crap, got them inside the house and made sure they were okay. My sister had only a few non-serious burns on her arm and managed to shield my niece from the explosion. At that point I was just so angry, went up to their door and started banging on it demanding they come out. They didn't answer, so I started trying to kick the door in. My mom and brother dragged me away and back inside to calm me down. Half an hour later the police arrived because the neighbors had called them about me. Luckily, after we explained what had actually happened, I didn't get in any trouble. But neither did they. Sorry for it being poorly written, I'm not the best writer. What state or country do you live in? I'm in Nebraska and had a similar instance last Halloween where some hood rats shot bottle rockets at my 7-year-old niece, and I straight went NFL linebacker on them, chased 2 of them and pinned them down and then called the cops. They were charged with menacing second-degree, battery first-degree of a minor and disturbing the peace, as firework detonation is illegal outside of July and New Year's Eve. Something similar happened to me and my friends. I was in college at the time. What happened was we were sitting on the balcony of the dormitory and having a few beers after a long day of preparing a class project, when the neighbors from the floor above us threw a big firecracker at us, and a girl got burnt from that. I lost it right there and went up and kicked their door in and found 2 crackheads laughing about it. Long story short, the 2 ended up with broken noses and cheekbones and a concussion. Afterward, we took our friend to the clinic to get treatment for the burn, came back, and continued drinking. Mine is a Halloween story as well. My wife and I are giving out candy and 2 kids, they were actually 15 and 17, showed up trick-or-treating and didn't even have a costume on. I said, whatever, it's not like I have a shortage of candy, so I gave them both a handful. No thank you, no smile, they just turned around. I went outside about 10 minutes later and about 4 packs of cigarettes and a bowl that I had like 15 lighters in were both gone from the front porch. In my impotent rage, I jumped in my car to try and find them but assumed they were long gone. They happened to be coming down the road on their bikes as soon as I pulled out, so I stopped in front of them and demanded my stuff back, and the older one laughed and said he doesn't have my crap. I got out and must have looked insane with rage, because as I approached him, he threw down his backpack and said, okay, it's in there, don't hurt me. They sat on the curb until the police arrived. Turns out there was a string of thefts and break-ins in the neighborhood that night, and were all eventually attributed to them and their friends. I didn't press charges, but I made sure their parents knew what they did, and other people did press charges for some of the more serious crimes, like breaking into a garage and stealing about $1,000 worth of tools. Story 4. When someone's kid at Golden Corral decided to put their hands in food containers, they did nothing about it. I work in an Italian restaurant. A parent let their kids run around the restaurant, and one of her kids went to the server area and put his hands in the Parmesan cheese. I shouted at the kid and escorted him back to his mom. She apologized and made the kids stay in their seats after that. There's a new woman at my church who lets her children run wild, and today one of them decided to steal an energy bar from our food pantry. I just about lost it at her. What is it with parents who let their children touch, take, or roughly handle random things that don't belong to them? It's just completely unbelievable what parents let their kids do and not interfere, and sometimes they don't even realize it. One time we were having dinner with a friend's family, and while the parents were raising their kids properly, and they were well behaved, the other kid used his own fork, which he'd already eaten with, to poke through every dish on the table, wondering what he'd get next. The parents didn't even twitch. It was so common to their own household and honestly not that bad, but really not that appetizing to foreigners. They didn't stop the kid because they didn't care. It was just something so normal to their dinners that they didn't even realize it might be disgusting to somebody else. Story 5. I'd been dealing with listening to my dad and his ex-girlfriend having screaming matches and occasionally getting dragged into it for like a year. They started again one evening, and she addressed me, demanding me to answer something or another to fuel her argument against my dad. I was just trying to play a game at the time and just kind of snapped and screamed, "I don't know, and I don't care, and I'm tired of your fighting." It wasn't much, but I've never raised my voice ever, and I think it kind of just stunned them both into silence. She walked out of the house. My brother and my stepdad didn't get along when we were teenagers. It got to the point that they were having screaming matches almost every night, and then my mother would join in on the yelling to try and get them to stop. In the lead up to my final school exams, I came storming out of my bedroom to the living room, went off at them and basically told them that if I failed my final exams, it was on them, and to either shut the hell up or screw off entirely because I was sick of it. Sounds like me. My dad and stepmom have fought weekly ever since I can remember. My dad gets upset when I don't take his side all the time, and my stepmom has her own problems that piss me off. I've spoken up at both of them recently saying something's gotta change. I'm only living here for 8 to 12 months before I get my own place. I can't take it anymore. Spoke up to my stepmom about her feeding the dog greasy, spicy, and unhealthy food. She froze up and walked away, texting my dad that she didn't appreciate the way I spoke to her. I'm very calm and stay out of most problems, but I'm tired of the disrespect and unwillingness to meet in the middle of both sides. So ready to move out. Reminds me of back when my sister and her boyfriend stayed over at my one-room apartment. I was doing a pretty difficult math assignment late at night, while they were fighting about something stupid. In the same damn room as me. I mean, they were whispering, but it was really pissing me off. I slapped my desk super hard and said, "I'm busy working on something important. Stop fighting already." My sister started crying, and suddenly she and her boyfriend were best friends again. He was comforting her, and she was more angry at me than her boyfriend. Story 6. When they brought the third sales manager 4 hours into my 90-minute timeshare presentation, we got a free 3-day stay at a condo in Legoland in exchange for sitting through the presentation. Of course, we took them up on it. The deal is, if you miss it, they can charge you full price, which in this case they had trumped up to about $2,000. I became very ill a month before, and we were still in the thick of it at the time of the presentation. After politely declining many times, I told the truth. The thing is, I might be dying, so it's just not the right time to take this step. The salesman, who had been very kind up to this point, said, "Well, if you die, don't you want your children and husband to have this? It's selfish to say no just because you may not use it." I cried. My husband lost his crap. I used my mom voice to tell him I was very disappointed in him. Then the salesman cried, and I felt much better. If you've ever been in a timeshare presentation, you'd understand. They basically do a high-pressure sales pitch that they don't let you leave from until either 1, you buy from them, or 2, you lose your crap. The reason you've been staying up to that point is that you have some sort of incentive. If you stay for the whole presentation, you get $75 or a free golf club or something. Or also, some resorts have a promo free week or weekend as long as you listen to their presentation, and you have to stay for the entire thing to get the reward. Once you reach that 4-hour point and another salesman enters the room or sits at the table though, you don't give a crap anymore and are ready to switch to ultra-violent mode. Story 7. This guy at work was cleaning out the work break room. Basically, he was throwing out people's personal belongings, so I saw my new coffee mug I bought specifically for work in the trash, and lost my damn mind. I started yelling at him that what he was doing was morally wrong and it was not his stuff to throw out. I went to my HR manager and complained to him about the principle of the thing. I took all of the coffee mugs in the trash out and washed them. Exactly! I used to be a waitress and never caused any drama. I was there to make money for my wedding. I showed up on time, didn't take smoke breaks, was never on my phone, and rolled with the punches. The 2 best compliments of my life came from my manager. One was him thanking me for not making him know my fiance's name. I never had problems to deal with at work, like the other girls, and I didn't chit-chat. And when all hell's breaking loose, he called me his calm little Hindu calf, which still makes me laugh. Anyway, this a-hole cook wouldn't stop calling me pet names and trying to touch me. Every time I said loudly and clearly, "Don't touch me." And my name isn't Sweetheart, it's a Hopeful Kitty, which I assume is their username. Everyone knew how I felt and tried to tell me that's just how he is, let it go. I told them that the way I am is that I don't want him to touch me. When the manager talked to him, he'd stopped for a few weeks and then started again. After months of this, I told the manager if it didn't stop, I was going to file a harassment complaint. The manager talked to the owner and asked if he'd rather have the cook or me because I was on the verge of quitting, and they agreed they'd rather have me 100 times over this dick. Dude was gone by the next day and I got an escort to my car every night. Turns out that if you are drama-free and calm, people really listen when you have a problem. That's a lesson I learned from my grandfather. He was an evangelist and a school teacher, a very soft-spoken man. The only loud thing about him was his laughter. His grandchildren, however, were havoc-wreaking monsters who didn't listen to anyone if we didn't want to. Imagine the worst kind of kid, drawing on walls, hitting people, the works. That's us. One day I was jumping on the bed after he had already told me not to, and I don't remember what exactly he said, but I remember the timbre of his voice and being just absolutely shaken by it. It was like God's thunder had just rung out, telling me to sit the hell down. You better believe the bottom of my feet never touched the bed again. I had a similar issue with someone at work a few weeks ago. A little background on the dude, as he's probably the most annoying person I've ever met. The guy was a perfect storm of incredibly condescending and an idiot. For example, I'd correctly screwed 3 screws in, you know, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, lol. Then he came over, stopped me like it was something important, and said, "So what you're going to want to do is turn the screw to the right to tighten it." He's also extremely scrawny, which makes more work for everyone as the job requires lifting. He'd do bizarre crap to pick things up, contorting himself in a way that would make a chiropractor yak, and then try to tell everyone why that's the correct way to do it. Anyway, we had a truck full of equipment to set up an event. We were meant to drop everything off at 7 a.m., then return in the same truck at 11 p.m. to break everything down. I left a pack of cigarettes in the center console. My partner for the day threw them out during that long break because he thought they were garbage. I was totally calm, checked the GPS for a gas station, and found one literally 2 minutes away. All he had to do was make 2 consecutive right turns. I started scrolling on my phone and realized 7 minutes have passed and we haven't stopped. Apparently he had completely missed the gas station and was too stubborn to use his GPS. I asked him what had happened, and he started saying how he was freaking out because we were going to be late, because I'm making him stop. Then got super passive-aggressive about how if I didn't leave my garbage in the truck, we wouldn't have a problem. I've never lost it at work before. I went out of my freaking mind at this idiot. Story 8. When my ex-wife's stepbrother told us a story about how he killed his neighbor's cat for fun and then lied to his neighbor about having not seen it. I have a coworker who told me when he was a kid there was this widow who lived in town who had some cats. He and his friends would figure out which one she loved the most, trap it, and kill it. I'm still civil with him since we work together, but holy hell does he make me sick. I lost a ton of respect for my own father when he amiably told me about when he was working at the county jail in the 70s. A bunch of them would get super drunk right before their shift ended, and one guy would drive his truck while a couple of them sat in the back and shot dogs and cats in the people's yards in the black neighborhood. He told this story like it was the good old days, with seemingly no sense that it was disturbing to me. I'm losing my crap just reading this. And the comment or two below it that are similar. If I lost one of my animals, I'd be devastated. I try to give them the best life they can have, and the fact that people kill them for kicks makes me to the brink of tears. Pets are defenseless and in some cases can be someone's emotional lifeline, so screw people who kill pets for giggles. When I was a kid, another kid in my neighborhood was rabbit hunting out in a field with .22s. When you rabbit hunt with rifles, it's more spot and stalk and can get boring. But I kinda prefer it to running dogs. Anyway, we've been at it for a few hours and I guess he was bored, so we're walking along and we see a dog that doesn't look like it has a collar. It was kinda far away, so it was tough to tell. Which isn't uncommon out in the country. We were on our friendly neighbor's farm, who we'd help with chores in exchange for hunting rights. The grass was kinda high up and we'd just see the dog's head pop up every now and then. Suddenly, Screwnuts whistles and the dog pops its head up and stops. Before I can ask what he's doing, Screwnuts raises his rifle and fires off a shot. The dog drops from view. I lost my freaking crap. I have never thrown a gun for safety reasons before or since, but I snatched his rifle out of his hands and lobbed it as hard as I could into the brush. I went looking for the dog and didn't find anything. I immediately went to the landowner, told him what happened, and then drove around to the various farms in the area asking around. Nobody was missing a dog, so hopefully he missed, and it wasn't just some poor stray that curled up and died somewhere. His hunting rights on that property were obviously taken away, and word got around. Believe me, you don't want to be known in a small rural town as the guy who takes pot shots at dogs. Story 9. My friend, who is usually a chill person, had some girl make fun of her brother, who was killed, and she ended up beating the crap out of her, smashing her face into the wall, and getting kicked out of school for it. I had something similar happen. I was physically and mentally bullied for years. I never swung a punch back. I never put up a fight. As soon as the news went around that my sister had terminal cancer, I gave the first 2 people who were there at the same time who talked crap about it hell. I battered the first one, then lifted the second off the ground by his throat. They were brothers, and the family wanted to press charges. The school sided with me, although I had a strict list of terms I had to stick to. They basically told the family of the 2 dickheads not to press charges or else they both would be permanently excluded in their final year of school just before their exams. Story 10. Back when I was working retail, I was manning the return desk when this woman came in to return 2 totes full of clearance clothes. She wants to rebuy them all since clearance stuff was now cheaper. That's against the rules, and I explain why, but per usual she gets a manager and the manager caves. Since she bought this stuff on 3 different receipts and mixed them all up, this transaction is fixing to take 30 minutes at least, and I am frustrated but hiding it well. 15 minutes in, I hear some commotion off to the side. I turn my head to see that this woman's 5 or so completely unsupervised kids have piled onto a flat cart and are pushing it around. I don't know why it set me off so badly, but I pointed and yelled at them, raising my voice for the first and last time during my 10-year stint. The entire place fell silent, and the customer was so mad at her kids that she took her stuff and left. A couple of coworkers said seeing me get angry was really unsettling, a blessing/curse that comes with being the quiet one, I guess. I hate when managers cave on policy. It's customer service, but at that point, why even make it a policy if it just makes your employees look incompetent for knowing and following the rules and enables crappy customers? So infuriating. I have no problem with exceptions being made for special circumstances, but if a lady A is a known fraudulent returner, then why the hell are you caving on policy? I work at a college campus's main store. One day, an older lady came in with 2 young relatives and tried to return some children's clothes. 1 shirt that she had bought on sale and 1 sweater that she wanted to exchange for a similar sweater, but not the same style in a bigger size. When we tried to explain to her for several minutes that the sale items were final sale, which it says on all of the sale signs, she just kept saying, "But I don't want it anymore." Eventually, she got agitated and raised her voice at us and demanded to speak to a manager. They caved and said she could return the shirt. Then they moved on to the exchange. The difference in cost was about $4 extra that she'd owe. And guess what she did? She refused to pay the extra because it's the same sweater. They also just let her have that too without making her pay for it. All it does is tell difficult customers who will continue to be difficult customers elsewhere that if you yell and complain enough, you can get away with anything. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.